They want to get at least one juror to so thoroughly doubt Michael Cohen's testimony that basically they can't, in good conscience, be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump did it. And here's why that matters legally. We're not all just talking about Michael Cohen because we remember him or he was loud or on TV a lot, although today they did discuss his dealings with everyone from the New York Times' Maggie Haberman to our own colleague Katie Tur. That's part of the case because media and interaction is part of what he did for Trump for many years. It's not that. It's really quite specifically that they land the idea that this guy is not on the level now, that what he said in this very trial is fundamentally unreliable or that they have doubt about it. So I'm going to go through these lines of attack with you. And if you're sitting here watching going, oh, seems like the DA is in some choppy waters, that's true. That's what's happening. Doesn't mean they can't win the case and doesn't mean you have to like it. There are plenty of people, including witnesses we've heard from, who are all around Donald Trump, people who once liked and supported him, who really feel that justice should be done, that he should face his accountable day in court, that he should be convicted, as Ms. Daniels said when she answered if the evidence supports it. So we're not here telling you whether to like this or not. We're here giving you, as we always try to do, the full facts of what's going down right now. So one line of attack today was the possible ulterior motives. Cohen pressed to confirm that the trial's outcome will affect him personally. And he said yes, pressing Cohen on how his history here is very personally wrapped up, that he had failed in a bid to get out of jail early, that he asked for that several times. And then, as part of this idea that he has perhaps a vendetta that has distorted the truth, the accuracy of what he's told the jury, today, like we've seen in earlier days, the lawyers really bore down on Cohen's ups and downs with Donald Trump. During his legal problems, how he did want a pardon. Cohen, though, adding the context in his answer that that issue came up because it was dangled to him, and he wanted this nightmare to end. Cohen's anger at being rebuffed from any White House job whatsoever came up. And again, that matters because the question being raised is whether that has passed the point of anger, which he's allowed to feel, he's a human being, and curdled into something that involves a vendetta where the truth might be sacrificed. For example, whether he has spun that story or lied about that history. And Cohen said on the stand he did ask to be President Trump's personal attorney, but not a different role of general counsel. Now, it went on and on like this today, on and on and on, if you will, just like it did the other day. And so it's possible that this style, this meandering road, could make jurors bored or dilute the larger point that the defense attorneys are trying to make, the doubt I've told you they're trying to raise. It's also possible, though, on the other hand, and I was thinking about this watching Cohen kind of go through it hour by hour today, that the nicks and cuts can slowly eat away at his credibility as the key witness to Donald Trump's state of mind in 2016. Another way to put this is, if the DA thought they could clearly prove and win this case without Michael Cohen, they would have brought this case without putting Cohen on the stand. There are other people who were involved they didn't put on the stand, other people who work for Trump. Susan McDougal. He's on the stand because without the other money guy, Weisselberg, who's in jail, which can't be used against Trump in court, but certainly makes Trump look bad in here in the real world. Voters and others can factor that in. The guy who was at the top of the financial food chain at Trump org has been to jail twice now. But without Weisselberg, without the CFO, they needed Cohen as the only other Trump aide who could speak to Trump's state of mind. That's why he's important. Now, Trump lawyers also, after things got, like I told you, sometimes a little meandering or boring, he found ways to dial it right back up. For example, bearing down on Cohen's storytelling in this very case in a moment that grew heated, pushing Cohen on this phone call that he made, and they have the record so they can see the call went into Trump's bodyguard in 2016. And Cohen insists that through that call, he spoke directly to Trump. And that's a viable story because Donald Trump, like other top people, can get calls to a main line, to a cell phone, to a secretary, to a security line, and then it's handed over. In sourcing and reporting, we do that all the time. You don't always get the top people directly. So the story from Cohen is he called the bodyguard and then spoke to Trump. And that call mattered because he says it was on that call where he and Trump connected through someone else's phone, and it was incriminating because Cohen personally assured Trump the hush money deal was done. Well, today, Trump's lawyer pounded on that. That was a lie, he practically yelled, suggesting Cohen suggesting Cohen maybe only spoke to the bodyguard and was now trying to make it worse and add this other detail, which then becomes just something that, people can debate. Now, that's a big moment. It doesn't mean Cohen was lying, and it doesn't mean the jury buys that, but it's certainly memorable, and it allows the defense to kind of put this front and center, and then they're going to probably refer back to it in their closing arguments. Remember we told you? Remember we raised the question? He was lying then. He admitted some lies, other lies he's denying. You can't take this guy's word. Now, as for the response, Michael Cohen simply suggested that attack, that impugning of his character, was not accurate. He continued, I believe I spoke to Mr. Trump about the Stormy Daniels matter. Trump's lawyer retorting, we're not asking for your belief. This jury does not want to hear what you think happened. Yes, I'm doing my best court reporting here, giving you a little spice, a little energy on it. Mr. Blanche was generally respectful, but he would dial it up that way at times, and he has these certain tricks. He would say, is there any doubt? Or if you don't have a doubt of that, then you have to admit it. He would use these kind of, they're basically lawyer tricks. And he would do the one I just read to you as well, where you basically say, we're not asking for that, we're asking for this. It's tactical. I don't think it's going to win or lose the case, but it's the kind of way that the lawyer was trying to get Cohen cornered. That's one memorable exchange, played out for the jury as the audience for this tale about who's telling the truth. So Cohen's not having his best week of the trial, not the best week of his life with all this, but not the worst either. And remember, the prosecutors have been ready. The testimony comes on the heels of corroboration from many other witnesses of the core outline of what Cohen is asserting, like David Pecker, like Stormy Daniels, like the documents. And again, I don't know exactly what the prosecutors will say in their closing, but if they're any good, they will try to close the circle on what they said in their opening. And what they said in their opening is, we're going to show you all the facts before we ever get to Michael Cohen. And they're basically implying that if you think Cohen is lying about this key stuff, it couldn't just be him. You'd have to have all these other people risking so much, including perjury charges, to make up some sort of conspiracy. And then why would Donald Trump cut the checks? Now, Trump's lawyers took a kitchen sink approach here. At one point today, the lawyer even said, sorry, we're jumping around a little bit. And it was more than a little bit. But they landed some blows on Cohen's credibility. And this afternoon, I want to show you another part again, so you can make sense of what's happening and why people are saying that the jury might have more questions about Cohen at the end of the day than the start. So they asked Cohen about something he did that, again, doesn't mean he's always a liar, but it does mean he lied. And he did something I could tell you that's very unusual, that lawyers aren't supposed to do, that's a violation of bar rules. He was secretly recording his own client, breaching legal ethics. And Trump's attorney said, you understand it's not ethical for a lawyer to record a conversation with their own client, correct? Cohen admits that's correct. And then he admitted that he did exactly that with Donald Trump. And then to explain the reasoning, it was to share it with a third party. So again, this is not a crime, and it's not alleged to be a crime. But if you do that as a lawyer, you are breaking the very privilege that you take an oath to uphold. The privilege, of course, means, as you probably heard, if you tell your lawyer something, they don't just keep it secret while they represent you. They could stop representing you, and they take it to the literal grave. They don't tell anyone else. They certainly don't tell anyone else with a live recording, which breaks the privilege. And by the way, if you want to get into it, he did that to a member of the media, even a friendly member of the media, the pro-Trump media, whatever you want to call it. Talk about breaking it. He's putting it all the way out there. Now, that could, again, be a part of what I'm calling these nicks and cuts about the jury's perception of Cohen and whether they ultimately believe him about the core stuff. Another thread from today is something we've heard a lot about, and it's one of the hardest things for Trump's side to explain. We've played this tape for you. This is the same thing I mentioned, the recording, right? So there's the ethical part, which cuts against Cohen. But then there's what's on the tape, which very clearly cuts against Donald Trump, like it or not, how the tape got created, when he seems to sound like not only secretive, but has a type of consciousness of guilt in wanting to pay the hush money in cash. Those are Trump's own words. I'm going to play for you again. Cohen made the tape about paying in cash. This was for the model story, Karen McDougal.
I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be...
Listen, what financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
I'll pay the cash.
No.
And here's what we learned today. You've probably, if you follow the news, you follow this trial, you've heard that tape. I've told you that tape's bad for Trump. And I'm not sure there's a good way to explain it away. But at a trial, you get to hear both sides. And I don't mean this as a diss to the Trump lawyers, Sometimes creative lawyering helps add doubts or complicate a story. It is up to the jury, not to you, not to me, not to any outside observer. It's up to the jury to decide what they think that tape means in full holistic context of all the evidence. But this is interesting today, and it's new. This is the first time we've kind of heard how they're going to deal with this. Trump's defense lawyers making the argument that Trump didn't mean actual cash, actual dollar bills, but that he was distinguishing between just using his own money and financing. Now, Cohen disputes that, although he says, yes, separately, that they would, in the world of real estate, discuss all cash transactions. Question here is if that's a totally different context. And if you think about it, this is why everyone deserves their day in court if they're accused of a crime. Because I'm not saying the Trump argument there is a good argument. I would weight it as unlikely to be true, based on everything we know. But they are raising what I've told you they're going to do, which is this reasonable doubt. Does that tape alone, or that tape with other evidence, give you 100% beyond a reasonable doubt style confidence? It's not technically 100, but, high confidence that he was being secretive, that he had consciousness of guilt, and that's why he said cash? Or will some jurors sit there and go, well, if people talk about all cash real estate transactions, I've heard of that, and it just means not going to the bank and taking money out, but it just means not using financing or a loan, maybe this was that. Now, if you're sitting through all of this and going, okay, Ari, what's the point? There is no point today. The defense doesn't have to prove anything, and they don't have to have a conclusion, and they don't have to have some grand narrative for the end of the day. All they're trying to do is make this jury believe Michael Cohen a little bit less than they believed him yesterday and the day before.